Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera. Together, in every episode, we get to explore what it is we really believe, how we practice, and we get to meet people who are on their own spiritual path. Together, we begin. I am here with my dear friend, Priya Dey-Sarkar. And Priya and I met 12 years ago in yoga teacher training.
Almost 14 or 15 now. 11, 2000.
Oh my God, you're right. Yeah, 2011, 2012. So yeah, 13, almost 14 years ago. That's so wild. And I think of her as a soul sister. It's one of those people that doesn't matter how long it's been since we talked. We pick up the phone and we just pick right back up where we were. We have all sorts of interesting things in common. And one of my favorite things about Priya is that I think of her as being sort of an especially magical person, just magical things happen to you. And when I first met her, she was a pipeline engineer for Chevron, right? And so she has these very sort of divergent and convergent paths as it comes to this work. So I'm really excited to share your experience.
Really happy to be here.
Yeah. I'll start with you the way that I start everywhere, which is, what you have probably a different spiritual background than many of the people I've talked to so far. So what was your spiritual life growing up?
I would describe it as magical, chaotic, unorganized, unorthodox, and incredibly rich all at the same time. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what that was until I stepped outside of it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, you
yeah.
What does that mean?
So,
say more.
I'm a first generation child of Indian immigrants and grew up in Texas, the Dallas area, Plano and Duncanville. And, my parents brought their culture with them. And so did many other Indians who immigrated at that time. And it was a community. It was a community from the start. And that really involved a lot of one thing in particular. That's gathering in people's homes and sharing food together and doing puja. And I just never knew anything different. Puja is this ceremonial act of praying or worshiping a god or goddess. And, I grew up in the 80s in North Texas, and I was surrounded by
right,
not
in Texas.
That. And so that's why I say the word unorthodox, because there's in that culture, in that context, in that time, it's like, what are you doing? It was so weird. It was so odd. And now it's like, it really is. It's the most magical thing ever to understand. My engineer brain goes straight to the science behind it first. And then I dive into the spirituality. Working on that still. But yeah, my spiritual life growing up was just a lot of gathering and praying and dancing and singing in small communities in people's homes, or sometimes, large gatherings. I'm full-blooded Bengali, which means we're Shakti. We're all about the Ma's, which is, Saraswati Ma and Lakshmi Ma and Kali Ma. And, that essence, it never really leaves you. And it's also in stark contrast to other Indians who don't have that as a dominant culture. And that's another thing I had to learn, is how diverse within India, our spiritual practices are. But it's all Bhakti. It's all Bhakti. Bhakti meaning devotion, and it's kind of raw root word, but which is, sharing food, sharing, prayer, sharing sadness even. And we just always did that.
In a lot of ways, puja as a practice was not something that we learned first, right? I mean, you and I did a Bhakti yoga teacher training together with Sean Johnson, and obviously Sean is very music and singing forward. And certainly, like, we incorporated the storytelling and the listening and the, a lot of pieces of what I would call like
Right.
modern bhakti, right? But we didn't do a lot of puja practice. And so when I learned about that practice, and like, I still feel like an infant
Me
when it
too.
comes to something like that. It
It's
thank you for
quite
saying that.
it's
It
quite a deep, deep well.
Yeah, and it's what I love about it is it gives me an experience of one-on-one relationship with the divine, right?
Mhm.
In a way that I
Right.
can't quite understand. It's like, right, it's like it's not just for me growing up in an American context, even though I didn't grow up Christian, right? It's still that sense of like, God is somewhere over there and you are alone, like talking to God and like hoping for the best, right? Whereas puja is this like, it's like this, right? It's like you and me sitting here, like having this really personal, precious experience. You said something a second ago about the science of it, and I really, really want you to say more about
Yeah,
that.
a lot of I was having this conversation um, here in Reno the other day with a good friend of mine, and her friend, who was like, "Tell me what your spiritual beliefs are." I grew up Southern Baptist. Tell me what your spiritual beliefs are. I just really want to know. I'm a stranger to sort of your culture. And I said, you know, a lot of people use the word maybe Hindu or some other flavor of that to describe um, what it appears that I may practice, and that's great. I love that word, but also, it's a dharma, it's a way of life, it's a culture. But bigger than that, I really explain, to others and sometimes to my yoga students as I think that Hinduism is really a universal spiritual science. You're drawing on the forces of the universe, the cosmic forces that are in the universe, and not all of them are clean and nice and beautiful sometimes. So these gods and goddesses that we worship, they're really also cosmic forces in the universe that come to us embodied, and they're real in that sense because they're real cosmic forces of the universe. Whether it's Krishna or Hanuman or even Christ, encompasses that. And as embodied figures with hands and a face and a personality and a story and a mythology, as you just mentioned, we're able to have a relationship with them and relate to them and understand those cosmic forces much better. And it's available to everyone. Of course, there are, extremes in every culture and every tradition and every religion about, what's like who's in and who's out. And barring any of those,
Right.
the vast majority of that I've experienced, like Hindus or a form of Hinduism, you could say, is Bhakti yoga, which is a more vernacular, more secular, more accessible, way to engage with these beings. You are really just, having a relationship with the universe in its many forms, and it's complicated, and these beings, they have real stories. And I mean, I don't know if they actually existed. There's evidence that's maybe that they did. But what's science about it for me is that it doesn't matter who you are, if you're black or white or green or purple or where you come from, and you engage in a relationship or a practice of bhakti yoga, this devotion, you will
Hmm.
get the benefits of it no matter what. You're
Yeah.
never excluded. And um, and
Yeah.
so it is repeatable. The benefits are repeatable. What's scientific? It's something that you can see again and again. It's predictable. It's repeatable. It doesn't exclude anyone, and it doesn't exclude the benefits. And one of the main things about bhakti yoga
Yeah.
is heart opening. I have never seen a student who engaged in this practice that did not happen. Is it fun? No.
Yeah.
It's not always fun.
No. Right. And yeah, and sometimes it really sort
Yeah.
of turns your world upside down. Right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like
It is
falling in
like
love
falling in
in
love.
that way.
And it's
Right?
a relationship with love also that we in the West don't it's hard to conceptualize because it is so universal and it's so unconditional. And yes, I understand that many monotheistic practices have that same idea, but I think I really
Sure.
feel it and I really live it when I walk into the presence of certain beings or a puja or a person or a play. I mean, there's so many ways in which that manifests really tangibly. You can feel it. You can feel the magic. And so you become the
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah. Okay, so that, I mean, that's where you started, which, I mean, to me is just so extraordinary. And of course, like growing up in the US, like to sort of atheistic intellectual parents, there's a part of me that like can't help but be jealous. I think that that will always be the case. Um, what does your spiritual life
Mm.
look like now? And are there things that have changed as you've gotten
I've
older?
gotten more into a deep dive into the stories, into the pujas, into the practices, into the chanting, especially kirtan. Now, that's something that I could
Yeah.
never have imagined myself leading that a long time ago, and now I don't know, it just happens. It just happens. Um, but it's also this, like, 3D everyday thing where there's our phones and the news and this crazy world, that we live in, and I just think, like, what can I do to be here in this moment instead of like being on my phone when I'm at the grocery store checking out or at the Starbucks barista. Like, it's almost a because it's really easy for me to go out there or just have a practice in front of the altar or just on your yoga mat. But like 24/7, what are we doing? And I don't know what we're doing anymore. If I can just be with someone or be present, and it's not easy. It's not easy. And so we have
No.
the system of yoga, the somatic practices that get us in our body. And it's an 8-limbed practice. So there's many aspects to it, right? And it's a system. Astrology is part of that system and it helps us with many things. But like,
Right.
I feel like if my spiritual practice of puja, say, is not serving me on a day-to-day basis, it's not serving me at all.
Yeah, boy, is that really is the rub. Like, and it's, I don't know if I told you that what the subtitle of the podcast is, which is like finding meaning in a world on fire. Like, I think now is the moment for all of us, right? It is so easy when things feel like they're escalating in the outside world, when there's so much, as you said, like on the news or social media or, I mean, local politics, local things that are happening. There's so much to distract us, to like spin us out, to like get us off in this, um, which is not to say that there aren't some
Sure.
things worth panicking about, but being in a state of panic isn't going to help. And um, that finding a way to, I mean, exactly as you said, like finding a way to be present, like finding a way to be with what's in front of you and to find the place for you to do your own work, right? Maybe that we could use the word
Yeah.
dharma there, to find the courage to show up in the place that you are meant to show up.
Actually, Vera, a long time ago when you visited me in Reno, you introduced me to a concept. I think it's officially a clinical name now, called complex PTSD, CPTSD,
Mm,
which characterizes
Mm-hmm.
the experience of many people, when we have sort of a little bit more non-tangible trauma that's chronic and prolonged, something like emotional neglect, or uh, there's various things that comprise that.
Right.
And when you get to the punchline of how to heal that, which is it's an epidemic, either PTSD or CPTSD, it's a
Right.
worldwide epidemic, maybe an American epidemic more than anything.
Yeah.
You get down to the practice of bhakti, which is nurture and nourishing. Like the punchline of how to heal that is like stability and
Yep.
nurture and a regulated nervous system. And so,
Yep.
I can do that for myself. I can, it can be in community. That's one of the other things about, growing up in community that's so important is like, there's been a notion of go away,
Yeah.
go alone and heal yourself and work on yourself and do the work. And I don't think that's working.
No,
And it's not working. And if we can, there was a friend of mine who was suffering and she wouldn't eat one day. And I just sat down and I fed her. I just fed her. And that's an extreme example, maybe. Maybe not everyone wants to be fed as an adult with a spoon. But then she ate.
But I think about that as that is one of, it's no accident that's one of the
It's not.
Bhakti practices, right? Is literally feeding people.
Yes.
No, I mean,
That right there.
I don't know that I have, yeah, I don't know that I've thought about what's happening in the world in that way. But yeah, I mean, like the framework of CPTSD was very helpful for me. It still is. And that notion that you're effectively what's happening is you're living in a
Stimulation.
constant state of nervous system, yeah, of stimulation and then dysregulation, right? So you're reacting to things in
Yeah.
an outsized way that maybe over time you start to realize you're like, what was even, who was that? There's a feeling almost of being like possessed. And what's so interesting is that that is exactly what my bhakti practice started to heal for me, was this ability to,
Yes.
Pete Walker, who's sort of the grandfather of this work, said, he starts as like, you have this like stop sign in your head. And then it is about nurturance. But for me, it was like being able to go to Durga, right? Being able to go to Ma.
And Ma, the mother, the most nurturing, the earth.
Yeah.
But also that energy that other people embody.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, I think about like the way that folks in the Krishna tradition, right, relate to Krishna. Like maybe sometimes Krishna is a baby and sometimes he was a lover, and it's like activating all of those kinds of love in ourselves. But that absolutely like that, I mean, I said to a friend of mine once, and I still think about it sometimes. I was like, what if all religious practices are just sort of reparenting practices?
Exactly.
Right? Like accessing true unconditional love. I mean, because humans are human, we are conditional.
We are. But God,
You know?
Jesus, Krishna, Hanuman, not. They have attended that, and that's
not conditional.
when we
unlimited
access their love, however we access it, whether it's through prayer, devotion, or bhakti. It is a magical instant healing. And there are human beings who are walking on this earth who have been able to maybe more often than not connect to that energy. And that energy, it's transferred onto other human beings. That's why gurus are important. Legit gurus, not legit ones. There's not very many of them. Or people who
legit ones, no.
We don't even know their name. Most of it's people who we don't even know their name. And they embody this energy of Christ, Hanuman, Lakshmi Ma, whoever it is. And they, I think that's why churches are important in that sense, because something's happening there. There's an intention. There's a, there's people who have gone before us and harnessed that energy somehow, and they're able to transfer it into their, into their group of devotees. And
Yeah, and the space itself is charged,
yes,
right? I mean, I don't know what the science of it is, Priya, but I know that like when you walk into a temple that has been put into spirit, like deep spiritual practice
it's
for
embedded.
decades or
You can feel it.
centuries, you can feel it. You know, it's like when you walk into a yoga studio that's like, okay, versus walking
Right.
into a Starbucks, right? Or like a retail store. We might call that bhav. I mean, it's something I think a little other than
Yeah.
bhav, but
It
like,
is, right? Yeah, I think it's creating
yeah.
clarity. Like there's this clear energy in those spaces. If you drown out, that's why when you go into pure nature, you feel the same thing. You're just it's it's that you're a clear vessel. That person is a clear vessel from universal love to themselves to the next person. So they're a pipeline. Not, happen to be a pipeline engineer. They're a clear pipeline. Yes.
Happen to. Yeah, no, I like that right. I know you're a fluid
Yeah.
engineer, so you know about this. Do you have any direct experience with beings like that? Like I think I know some stories about this, but like, is there anything around that you feel like you want to share?
Yeah. And you might know this story, you might not, but Thanksgiving weekend of Soul School, we were reading Be Love Now. And frankly, when I
Uh-huh.
started Be Love Now by Ram Dass, I mean, I had heard about Ram Dass, and I don't know. The book started off talking about psychedelics and the use of psychedelics.
Right.
And I closed the book.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, no.
You're like, no, this is not.
That's just not my
Not signing
jam.
up for
And
that.
I haven't, but I know how helpful it is to so many people. But it starts off, I think it starts talking about even some harder drugs than that. In page 1 through 5, and I was like, I'm just gonna close this book, and then I picked it up like a week later, and I just sort of slowly, carefully read it, and it got more and more and more compelling, the story. And ultimately the story is about Hanuman's grace and the energy and the experience that Ram Dass describes. And he describes it in words, but you don't know it till you know it. And I had a dream that Thanksgiving weekend. It was like that Friday or Saturday night. And I clearly know that the dream started sometime soon after I went to sleep, and it ended, right before I woke up. It was a long dream, 6 or 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And in that dream, like, I don't know who Maharaji is. Like, he is not actually a major, Maharaj Neem Karoli Baba is not actually a major, large Indian saint figure. He's a smaller one. But there's Shirdi Sai Baba,
Right.
there's Sri Ramakrishna, there's a lot. But not Neem Karoli Baba. Never really heard of him. And I go to sleep, and it's a clear, I am clearly in another place. And with me is Neem Karoli Baba. And I'm like, oh, you're this guy. You're this guy. You're this guy in the book. What are we doing here? And he just sat with me. He just sat next to me for the entire 6 or 8 hours. And I had read the words, Ram Dass's words, but I had no idea what he was talking about until that dream. I felt that unconditional love. I knew it was real. And I've never I've never had that experience since then. I've not encountered him in that way. I mean, I encounter him every day, but not in such. It was him,
Sure.
and he said to me, "I know you're in this class." It's like some class, and I think it was in Hindi. He said the words, which I don't really speak,
Yeah.
um, but I knew what he meant. And he said, "I'm watching over your class. They don't know it, but I'm watching over your class." That was the last thing he said to me. But he sat with me those entire 6 or 8 hours so that
Mm,
my engineer brain could go away and I could feel that love. And it's something you can never forget. You don't feel it inside a temple. You feel it inside a temple, but you don't feel that level of love could have only come from his presence. And it took me a long time to just
yeah.
really understand even the relationship of him to Hanuman. Years, and I'm still understanding that relationship.
Yeah.
But Hanuman has been in my field, in my orbit, since in the womb. My grandmother used to sing the Hanuman Chalisa. Both sides of my family have quite strong spiritual, different ones, but strong ones. And it was
Yeah.
just around me, but I didn't get it. And I think it wasn't until, here we are in New Orleans, 30 years old. And like,
Right.
it's like, it just clicked in that moment.
Wow.
So I've been lucky to encounter him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing that story, right? I feel like there may be people listening who are like, what are you guys talking about? And if you're one of those people, that's it's okay. Just keep going. Um, you have watched my experiences with Hanuman too, and it's funny because I don't think about. I stopped trying to figure it out a long time ago. I just stopped trying. I was like, it doesn't matter if I understand what's going on here or not. What I know is um, I took an amazing job with this organization that was extraordinary, that I was so excited about, and everything was going really well. And then I went to my first Bhakti Fest, and you were like, come with me. We're gonna, Nina's singing the Hanuman Chalisa in the morning. And I was like, okay, sure. And I went and I sat with you that morning, and I was like, first of all, like completely out of my depth. The Hanuman
Complicated.
Chalisa, is
Yeah.
40 lines. Yeah, it's like 40 lines plus the invocation in a language that I don't speak. And here I'm like watching all these people who like know the whole thing. At a reasonable pace, it takes, 6 or 7 minutes to go through. But after that weekend, waking up and singing the Chalisa every morning, 4 mornings, I came home and I was like, I have to learn it. I didn't know. I just was like, I have to learn it. And it took me years to put together the timing here. As soon as I came back from Bhakti Fest, my job
Yeah.
was a disaster. Everything started to fall apart. I started I was not good at it anymore. I didn't care about it anymore. Um, I, for the first time in my professional life, I was demoted. I'd only been there for like 6 months. Shit was falling apart. Um, and, within 3 months of learning the Chalisa, I quit my job and became a full-time yoga teacher. And I truly, I look back on it now and I'm like, well, it seems sort of
A
obvious
catalyst.
that
Yeah.
was the thing that happened, right? And you and I have talked about like the way that Hanuman is like, and the Chalisa specifically is like burning through karma. And again, I sort of go like, I don't even know what that word means. I don't know what that stuff means. And um, that period of transformation is like one of the most extraordinary gifts I've ever experienced. And certainly it started when
Yeah.
I was in teacher training. Like that was the sort of preamble. That was like the preview. Yeah, and I have no idea what's happening there, but and when people ask me about my lineage, and I sort of I have a sensitivity around that, right? Because I know that, that like Guru Parampara lineage is important, and I think a lot about being a white lady, being a yoga teacher, and you and I have talked about that a lot. That I was like, oh yeah, I guess, Neem
Yeah.
Karoli Baba
Yeah.
that is my lineage. That is my, I am, and I have not had that same kind of experience that you have direct with with Maharaji, right? I have had the experience of being in the presence of that
Hmm.
unconditional divine love, um, and it
Forever.
changes
You'll
you.
never forget it.
It really changes you. Yeah, you never go back. You never, because at least in the beginning, you're like chasing it, or I was chasing it. I was like, I need to feel that all the time. What if I could feel that all the time? That would be so amazing. Um, but I think about Krishna, the way Krishnadas talks about Maharaji, and like, it wasn't just that you loved him or you felt his love for you, right? It was that, right? It's like you were just like the way you were just so head over heels in love with somebody, right? It was that you loved everybody else too. And that, I will tell you, in this moment in time, that feels like a tall order, right? To have that level of extraordinary, immersive, almost defenseless love
Feels dangerous.
for everybody, you know? Yeah, feels scary. Feels scary. And somehow that feels important too. Whew, that's a good segue actually, maybe. Is there in the world right now, like things are wild, is there a spiritual principle that you're kind of like hanging on to that helps you move through just every day, staying present?
Hmm. In a nutshell, I would use the word surrender. And in particular, I have developed a relationship with a few of these characters in the Vedic pantheon. Not everyone, but a few. And I give it to them. I invoke them. That's a form of prayer or worship or puja, but it's too hard for us human beings to like do it ourselves. And that's what they're there for. That's what they want. They want you to
Yeah.
rely on them to deal with it. Some of the hardest things that I've been through in life were cleared or dealt with or miraculously healed 100% of the time by that act, by my own personal surrender of that issue, like invoking. And it may not be like on the full moon in a puja or whatever, but just like through that one-on-one relationship that you have with that being.
Yeah. Is there something that comes to mind when you think about, one of those like hard
Mm.
moments?
I mean, I think, when my sister was in a coma and probably not coming out of the coma,
Yeah.
and they just said, pull the plug, pull the plug, pull the plug, and we weren't having it. And every day, my cousin and I, we would go to the Hanuman temple,
Yeah.
and we just chanted over and over and over again. And that mantra, the Chalisa, is a mantra of miracles. It will move mountains. It is that
Yeah.
essence. It changes fate. It changes karma. And I believe my sister had no will because she was in a coma, obviously. But we, as a community, like the Indian community in Dallas,
Yeah.
like so many friends and family, strangers, the Mormon church showed up for that. Like many members of like we met them in the parking lot of the hospital, and they were.
Wow. Wait, they showed up for the
They showed up
Chalisa, or
every
they showed
day
up
for her for like a month. And then when she got
to pray
transferred
for
to
her? Yeah.
Houston, the same people went there. You can't tell me the stuff isn't connected.
Wow.
Like you can't tell me
No, of course
you
not.
can't tell me that
Right?
we
And
weren't
we
all
know, I
tapping
mean,
into the same energy. And they did prayers of Christ for her. Yeah. But it was the same space.
and we know, I mean, there is scientific research that
Yeah.
says that prayer heals people. I mean, that when the first time that I came across those studies, I was like, wait, what? This can't be, what?
And at no point
Um,
were they like, you have to be in our church. It wasn't about that.
No, I mean, and that really is, that's like tapping into, again, like beyond name and beyond sect and beyond, tradition. Yeah, it is tapping into that unconditional, extraordinary.
She was hit at 117 miles an hour head on.
Holy shit, I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I remember singing the Chalisa for her from the studio.
Well, energy,
Yeah.
it's the first principle of like engineering class, thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So when you sing, when you
Right.
chant, when you say a thing, especially sound, we know the power of sound. It's documented in every faith in the world. What happens to that sound? It goes somewhere. It doesn't disappear. That energy doesn't disappear. It does something.
Right.
It goes somewhere. And I think Krishna Das talks about how often it plants a seed. Maybe it's watered later or it grows later, but that energy goes somewhere.
Yep.
Especially with intention.
Yeah, and the way he talks about it. Yeah. So is that still sort of one of your main primary practices, like being in a chanting practice?
Yeah, I
Is
really
there-
time it with, so
Say
there's
more.
these astrological portals, moon calendar, lunar calendar, there's times of the year, Navratri and Hanuman Jayanti, and to come with intention to each of those practices and gather in community. It's something I've been doing for a long time. Because the power of the energy is multiplied tenfold during those astrological portals. That's why these holidays and such are so important. And then when you do it in community, and then there's 1 billion people. Now there's more than 1 billion Indian people on the planet. I don't know how many are chanting, but a lot.
Right.
A lot. Probably
Enough. Yeah,
short
exactly.
of 1 billion.
Enough.
Because this is our life.
Yeah.
If you just think about that, like, what is the energy of that? On the same day, at the same time, for the same intention. If you're not tapping into that, you're missing out.
It's like, take advantage. I mean, I think from a Western perspective, we have that, like, even if you're not Christian, you know what that energy is of Easter, right? You know what what it feels like at Christmas time, even if that's not your personal practice or belief system. I could go down a long way down that road that I don't necessarily want to go. Yeah, is there anything else that feels like important to share today? It's so funny. You said you thought I was going to be surprised, and I was like, none of this is surprising to me.
I think I probably don't, like, I don't necessarily regularly like have a routine of daily spiritual practices. I do, I do yoga and I chant and I'll meditate, but it's not this like religious, rigorous thing of like, got to do this many times a day, this many times a week. I don't do that. It doesn't feel good. It feels right when it astrologically feels right. Um, and yes, there's something to be said about a disciplined practice, but if I had to like characterize my spiritual practice, I would just say I strive every day to be present, with everyone.
Yeah.
Which is the whole thing. Read Eckhart Tolle about why that's important. And then, you know, this idea of invoking grace, which we kind of already talked about, because doing these things, the doing and the doing and the doing of the practices, do it if your body wants to do it. Do it for your fascia, do it for your tissues, do it whatever. But it's just like, I just want to stop doing all that stuff.
I really resonate with that in a big way. And I also think there are life cycles and like rhythms that come in and out of my practice. It's like you and I can say, okay, I may not do the same practice every day. I may not chant 40 rounds of the Chalisa every morning for whatever. But I have had those
Yeah.
rigorous practices, right? It's like in the beginning for many years, you're like building up the library so that you can be present in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I go through phases. I go through phases where I'm like, I just don't want to. Um, and then I go through phases where I feel like I'm craving something that I know I can't get from like a, everyday material world. Even from being in spiritual community, which also feels really important to me,
Yeah.
you know. But that there is like a very specific I mean, the example that I can think of right now is that I had this like just deep, sort of bone deep yearning. It's like I just want to sit still. I just want to be here. And
What?
and there are lots of different ways probably that I could have met that, but it was like, oh yeah, I know what that practice looks like, right? Like that is one of the most simplest meditation practices, is to just arrive and be. And there's so much around us that tells us to like keep doing, right? As you said, like do, move, like, all this information that like there is, I think that initial practice of laying the pathway so that you can just sit still. And I occasionally need to like plug back in and get refreshed to that, and we'll have like a more dedicated practice for a while. And also, I think about it like I didn't grow up in the same way that you grew up, that like where being in a personal, close relationship with the divine, as chaotic and unorthodox as it might have been, was just like, that was just true. That was just the world. That's just where you were. I had to learn that in adulthood. And I think many of the people I know, I'll say, many of the people I know had to learn that in adulthood too.
I think the last thing I would say that's really important now is, especially now in this crazy world that's so divisive, is this notion of just having radical grace and radical acts of kindness. Like, that's part of the nurture. Like, the other day I paid somebody like $20 more than they asked for a simple work that they did on my fence. I just paid them $20, and it's not a tipping culture. Like, that's not a tipping culture necessarily. But he almost couldn't accept it. He was like, "This, you can't pay me $20 more." I was like, "Yes, I can. I can pay you $20 more than you asked for," which was, it was like an $80 repair, which was, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't $20 on 1,000, but like
Yeah.
it was something I could do, something I wanted to do, something that felt authentic. And he just it was magical for him, I think, to receive that. So just, where it feels authentic, I think, to give in a radical way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
without expecting anything in return, right? That practice alone
Yeah.
will change you, regardless of what it, I mean, it certainly will also change the other people involved, but it will change you when you start doing things like that. I mean, and they don't even have
Yeah.
to be
With your
monetary.
words.
Um, with your words, um, letting other people in traffic is like one of the most,
Simple.
it seems like such a like radical, yeah, anything that's like in contradiction to this, like, get yours
Yeah.
ethos,
Yeah.
is tremendously
Mhm,
powerful
mhm.
in my experience.
I'm hearing the words in my head, that's what Maharaji did. That's what Neem Karoli Baba did with his devotees. And he's another level, we're not him, but but but
Yeah, he's like
we
beyond.
can
Yeah.
do that when we feel that here and there, or whatever, however it comes.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
You're
my friend.
welcome. What a lovely conversation to have on a
I
Saturday morning.
appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in, Curious Hearts. If this episode was useful, I hope you'll follow the show or leave a review or share it with somebody who you think needs it. And if you're craving support on your own spiritual path or seeking some meaningful work, you can find ways to work with me at veralester.com. Otherwise, until next time, please stay grounded in that curiosity that you've got and keep turning towards what matters. See y'all soon.